Everybody act tough when they up.
Thunder 2025 champs. I was in Tulsa, drove to OKC with Micah for game 7. He was kind enough to give me a second seat. Nate, Micah's friend from home, is still sort of grappling with that, and it to be determined whether that's kind of changed the dynamic of my friendship with Nate. I don't really care. I don't like the way he's handled it. But here we are. And it's a really, really amazing time to be a Thunder fan. And now we can exhale and talk about this team moving forward, but also we should focus first on what we just watched. Nate, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Pleasure to be here. I will not pretend that you getting the ticket has nothing to do with me being a first-time guest here, but we'll make it work. 5'9" barefoot, 5'10" in shoes, 5'11" on Hinge.
God, that's bad for me if you're 5'9" without shoes. Micah.
Good to be back. I just want to, point out before we get everything started that both of the hosts of the Boris Dirk pod picked the Oklahoma City Thunder to win the title before the start of the season. At the time, I was furious. Seemed like an obvious jinx, probably personally directed at me and perhaps Nate, but here we are. You guys look smart. I don't have to be mad about the jinx anymore. And I am 6'2" barefoot, 6'3" in shoes, which is also the height that Bill Simmons is convinced Lou Dort is. He's just wrong, but he says that every chance he gets. He likes to pretend that Dort's actually 6'2", as if that somehow makes it more impressive.
Yeah, we have the combine numbers. Lou Dort, in basketball terms, is closer to 6'5" than 6'2". But do your thing, Bill Simmons. Make fun of ESPN, even though you're the only one saying X player needs to step up. Max Klotz, welcome back to the show.
Welcome back. I mean, I never left, but I'm I'm always here. 5'10" barefoot, 5'11" and 7/8 in my Giannis Zoom freaks. Micah, appreciate the shout out for picking the Thunder preseason. You're goddamn right. We saw it coming the whole way. Made some friendly wagers along the way, which will pay off for me in the future. I'm sure my friends haven't forgotten about those. And yeah, can't wait to dive into an all-time season. Let's do it.
First of all, what happened to the mainstream American basketball media that I'm pretty sure Bill Simmons' podcast is still the most listened to sports podcast, at least in America. And they're talking about whether anyone believed the Pacers really had a chance to win the series. Like, once game 7 was already underway, it genuinely blew my mind. Like, obviously the Pacers had the Thunder on the brink of disaster. Obviously they had a chance to win the series since jump, but especially after they went up 2-1 and had the Thunder on their heels. But Nathan, let's start with you. Boris Dirk, rookie. You thought it was over down 1-2, right? Because that's kind of just your personality type. I mean, you were texting me like postmortems down 1-2 to the Indiana Pacers.
Because it makes it that much sweeter, Drew.
All right. Thank you, Nate. Micah, be honest. Did you lose hope? Did you believe down 1-2 that the Thunder had a better chance than not? Did you think that the Pacers had just found some sort of like transcendent confidence and self-belief and identity? Take me through your 7-game journey just a little bit.
Yeah, I didn't lose hope down 1-2. Since Nathan and I are texting about this every day, I have to sort of stay somewhat rational and optimistic. I would say there was one moment in which I started to lose hope, and it was, I think, near the end of the third quarter of game 4. They were down 11-13 or something. Obi had just made like 3 shots in a row. I think Obi had a huge dunk that made it double digits, and that was really the first time in the whole playoff run when, of course there were nervous moments, but I think I lost belief for a few minutes and thought, oh, we're really going to lose this. Like, it's just the Pacers are too special and we're not playing our best. And that's why I don't want to hear all this bullshit about, oh, Halliburton got hurt in game 7. We'll never know what really would have happened. sure, we had to win in game seven and their second best player got hurt. Uh, but
Wow.
like the defining moments of the series happened throughout the series, and maybe the biggest one was the fourth quarter of game four when Halliburton was healthy and playing home, and Shea just was the best player on the court by far on either team, took the game into his own hands and won an incredibly gutsy fourth quarter on the road and saved the season. Who knows? But I don't think we're winning the series if we lose that game. So when you think back to like the hinge moment, we don't even get to game seven probably if that game doesn't end like that.
And
Yeah.
Drew, one of the reasons it felt so grim was because I think we were facing the fact that if the Indiana Pacers would have won, it could have been the best sports story of the decade,
Yeah.
probably the best sports story since Tiger won the Masters in 2019. And so there's this momentum that is almost calling for it to happen. And I think
Yeah.
that was playing in, and it's at around that time that Mike is talking about is when it really crystallized into a massive narrative.
And also, I'll be real, like I pretended at various points throughout this series to hate Halliburton, to hate the Pacers because I love this Thunder team and I love you guys and I wanted you to get over the hump. But like even you guys, like being from Tulsa, rooting for a small market team, like it's really hard not to respect the story that Indiana just put together. And, you know, by the end of the series, it clicked for me that they gave me the exact same feeling we had from a couple of years of the Miami Heat just a few years ago, like the post LeBron Miami Heat figuring out how to get back to the finals twice. It just became the sort of team where you throw all stats and metrics out the window. You just like look at the body language. You look at dudes who have elevated from regular season to playoffs, and you're like, I don't know anything anymore about the NBA playoffs. Like when I picked the Heat to beat the Celtics in the 2023 Eastern Conference Finals, it wasn't because I thought they had anything close to a talent advantage over Boston. It was just very clear that Miami was playing at a very different level than they had to that point in the season, and had more belief and more toughness, more grit, and was more comfortable in the deep waters than that Boston Celtics team. And the Thunder were so solid that I was never able to get there. I was never going to pick Indiana to beat you. But it did start to feel like a team of destiny there for a second. Obviously, game one, Halliburton's game winner, only exacerbated that feeling and that fear for Thunder fans. But what an absolutely magical season for Indiana. And as a Blazers fan, like I loved watching two geniusly constructed small market teams duke it out.
Absolutely. And I was at the same spot, I think, as Micah and Nate with that game four. After game three, I had a lot of confidence still in OKC. I thought game one was like a fluky, they led for 47 minutes and 59.7 seconds of that game and lost. And game two, they were clearly the better team. Game three is like the classic. You go back to the home team, they're super juiced up and they win. And I was like, all right, they're going to assert their dominance in game four and just get this thing back on track. And yeah, just game four is so often, I feel like, just kind of a classic gritty turning point game. And it's funny because OKC's had to do this before. They did it in Denver in game four as well. And this series in so many ways mirrored the way that one went on a game by game, note by note basis. And yeah, once they pulled it out in game four, it felt like they had it in hand. And then J-Dub had his legacy game in game five, dropping 40. Fans of the pod will know we've been on J-Dub since the very start. And seeing him get to have that moment in the finals was amazing, just as someone who's been following him since he came into the league. And then in game seven, I loved that, like, this Thunder team, it's obviously led by Shea and to a lesser extent by their other two stars in Chet and Dub. But I was so happy that it felt like everyone up and down the roster who was a contributor got to have some kind of moment in game seven, it felt like, where it was like a real win that felt like it encapsulated the way their season had gone, where like Shea's leading the pack, but Dub is making key offensive plays. Chet's a monster defensively. Hartenstein, Caruso, Dort just providing that edge and energy. And it didn't really click until the second half, I think, and we'll get into Game 7 specifically. But I was happy that everyone kind of got to have their moment in that Game 7.
Except Jay Will. Micah lamented that one just because of the pattern of calls and like the last 30 seconds of substitutions. Jay Will wasn't able to get on the court. Also, maybe not the like last game or two of the season that Isaiah Joe wanted, but like you saw the way that the ancillary guys who didn't really get to pitch in that much in the finals were still amped, obviously, for their team. I'll just start on the Game 7 experience I had with Micah. Like Sunday was very surreal for me the entire day, partly because I went out Saturday night and then had a 7 a.m. flight from Newark, and I was dazed when I got there. Had to skip lunch and just, make Micah's dad wonder what I was doing in the guest room. I was just sleeping. I promised Mr. Cash. Doctor, shit, he's retired.
Have some damn respect.
He's got to earn that. But oh god, he's actually going to listen to this. But it's really interesting because like once you get inside of Paycom, like it's bedlam and the place is packed well before tip. And you see a little bit of yellow, but like they do a particularly special job of keeping it a thunder environment and like keeping the outsiders out. But like just outside the stadium in OKC, it's really quiet. Like it's still small town vibes. It was not raucous before the game. We got double cheeseburgers a couple blocks away. I wouldn't recommend that for anyone who finds themselves attending a finals Game 7. It became apparent quickly that we should have gone single cheeseburger. And Micah didn't help me a lot with the fries. So I was already kind of at a disadvantage heading into the event. In the event, I figured it out. But walking in there, it had just been such a long day, such a long couple days of anticipation after that absolutely brutal OKC showing in Game 6. And then the surrealism of Sunday, of the day, was only amplified by Tyrese Halliburton going down and then like checking my phone every couple of minutes and seeing 100 messages, and ESPN won't stop showing us the ripple. And I'm like trying to show Micah a tweet that has the video, and he's like, "Get that shit out of my face. I don't want to see it." Micah is a very tribal maniac when he needs to be, and just sort of refused to accept that the Halliburton injury was going to be a part of the story. I mean, even when like everyone in the stadium knew that Halliburton had torn his Achilles, Micah fully believed that Tyrese was somehow going to show up for the second half and ruin his life. So yeah, Micah, like take us through the early stages of Game 7, your thought process, and what you were thinking when the Thunder are down 1 point at halftime.
Yeah, I mean, credit to Nathan, who we called on the drive up just to rub in his face a little more that he didn't get the ticket. But he said, the Thunder have come out slow in every big game we played this season, pretty much. You'd have to go back to really check, but I think that's pretty much true. Like people probably forget that even in Game 7 against Denver, when we won by 30, the first quarter was just horrendous. We couldn't score. And so in some ways I was expecting it, and then it was indeed, we come out kind of tight. Then Halliburton gets hurt. It's just so weird. Like you said, I couldn't accept it. I don't know. Part of it is that I had seen him, icing his leg during walkouts in Game 6 and then looked totally fine. Afterwards, when I listened to whatever, all the pundits, they're like, the game got so weird. Like it was weird to watch. You could tell both teams were so affected. I mean, obviously both teams were affected. Yes, I'm not disputing that, but I would say my sense inside the stadium was, yes, he got hurt. Nobody in there believed that like that was going to make it an easy game for the Thunder. I mean, none of the fans believed that, and the Pacers obviously didn't believe that. Like they'd gone through too much. Depth is one of their strengths. And, I had a feeling they were going to find a way to keep it close. Now, with that being said, we were atrocious on offense in the first half. That's just, there's no other way around it. And luckily, the defense, as it's done all year, was good enough to keep us in it. And then we came out in the third quarter and, put together a really peak Thunder defensive effort. It's what has been winning us games all year, and it's what won us that game. Just one thing on Halliburton, just because I got to get this take out there. Um, so the guy, he tears his Achilles, just devastating. Totally understand. Has to go right back into the tunnel and talk with the doctors. Probably get an MRI, whatever. I'm sure at halftime it was emotional. Everyone was probably coming in and seeing him. Just saying, if I were in that position, or let's say I was just on the team, I would probably want him to come out and like sit on the bench for the second half. I don't know. I don't know what else he's doing. He wasn't getting surgery. I've confirmed that with Dr. Cash. Like that's not how it works. You get it the next day. He wasn't doing any sort of rehab. Like all you got to do is elevate the thing, and it doesn't really matter whether you're watching from the locker room or the sideline. I don't know, galvanize the guys, come out there, make yourself a presence. Little weird to me.
If you have a guy, if you have a guy come out and just be like bawling in an absolute mess behind the bench, don't you think that would kind of fuck with the vibes though?
I mean, is he still bawling at the start of the third quarter? Like, I don't know. He had an hour, get the tears out. He's probably talking to like his agent and his family about the monetary implications. But just saying, I found it incredibly soft that he stayed in the locker room for the second half, and it really confirmed everything I already believed about him.
I think that actually it's funny hearing the in stadium or in arena take because I think all the pundits saying that like the stadium got weird is just like projection from it felt really weird watching it on TV because you're like super invested. Obviously, it's the biggest NBA game since 2016. We haven't had a game 7 of the finals since 2016, and just to because in person, you see the injury, you see his reaction from a distance. You might not even be able to tell like exactly how emotional he is from a distance. And then like he's gone, he's back in the locker room, it's done, and the game keeps going. But on TV, you keep seeing the reaction, you keep seeing the fucking replay of his calf rippling, and they're just showing it like over and over and over and over again. And they keep showing like Tyrese Halliburton will not return, lower leg in the bottom. And I feel like as someone watching it on TV, I just like kept being drawn back to like the moment of the injury over and over and over again, and like all the close-ups of his face as he's like realized what has happened to him. So I could actually see how it was like almost a weirder mental environment watching on TV compared to watching it in person, because in person it's just kind of like swept away and the game goes on.
No, I mean, what I feel like it was most uncomfortable at Paycom when Halliburton came out and hit 3 threes in what felt like the first 3 minutes and felt like he was channeling Steph, and Micah already has a lot of Steph trauma. Lord knows he didn't need to see like, a tongue out maniac, like lasering from jump. But the funny thing about the Halliburton injury, at least from my perspective, was the play before the Thunder on offense, and J-Dub, as he does sometimes, just kind of lost the ball, was a little bit loose with it. And that happens a lot in this series because it feels like there are just arms everywhere in this matchup, and guys are clawing at drives, whether it's Siakam or Cason Wallace. And I told Micah there were so many turnovers in game 7 where I genuinely didn't even know like who knocked the ball loose. It's like football. Like there's a collision in the paint and all of a sudden the ball is like rolling the other way and they're off to the races. And but actually when J-Dub lost the ball in the possession I'm referencing, he kind of slipped. Like it didn't seem like it was totally his fault. And it looked very similar to the ensuing Halliburton slip. And so we're watching the Thunder go the other way and score. And it isn't until I look back down the court and see Halliburton down, banging the hardwood, that I realize something might be more wrong than before with that leg. But yeah, I mean, and then at that moment, I can't tell my Thunder fan friend what I'm thinking, which is like, it's obviously going to be easier to win now. But then the energy changed again because the Thunder, like Micah said, were so stuck in mud offensively. And when Nembhard hit that disgusting like tween hezzy
It's the
three, to
same
take the
fucking
lead.
three. Same fucking three. He hit it in game 3 against the Knicks last year to
Yeah.
to stop us from taking a 3-0 lead. Carry on.
At that point, I'm just looking around and grown ass men are staring up at the sky, like asking, is this really how this story is going to play out? Because yeah, I mean, I think I agree with Micah that like there in most playoff settings, you can argue Siakam is their best player. Like it's not insane. At the end of the day, I still believe in my gut that Halliburton is the engineer behind it all and the most valuable. But Nemhard's playoff ceiling at this point, we must say is like way up there. And I totally thought Nemhard was capable of having the best night of his life on the most important night of his life, and carrying them to like, the future best 30 for 30 of all time. So they're up 1 at half. We go into the tunnel and we're just chatting with a dude from Arkansas who drove 4 hours to get there. I forget the town he's from. It wasn't one I'd heard of, because I'm a coastal piece of shit. But yeah, no, it was very quiet and eerie at half in that stadium. Because what is there to say? It's like nobody was counting the Thunder out. I don't think anyone expected them to lose, but you just had so much respect for this Pacers momentum, confidence. Rick Carlisle out coaching Dag, even though like I still love Dag. I believe in Dag, but like he got out coached in this series, and it was very easy to tell yourself at a certain point that the Thunder had the more talented roster, but Indiana was the more cohesive team. And so, yeah, all of this to say that tension, once released in the fourth quarter, it was truly glorious.
I mean, there's a reason why game sevens of NBA finals are always low scoring in the first place. And it's because they're there's a ton of tension throughout the picture the whole way through. And I think what the Halliburton injury did is it just made both teams need another quarter and a half to fully get into the flow of the game. And that's what it did in the end. And I don't think the Thunder really got in the flow at all until that broken play Lou Dort 3 from half court, roughly halfway through the third quarter. And that's what did it. And it was in no way, shape, or form a designed play. And it seemed like from the outside, that's when Paycom actually erupted in the first place. Before that, it was quiet.
Yeah, Drew and I obviously text a lot about games, and we have our other friend, Coach God, who we text with as well. And we'll just sort of, when we're watching games and we see a shot that like feels like it changed the way a game is going or a play, we'll just text like, that's game. That Lou Dort shot felt like game, which is funny because Siakam came down and hit a 3 right afterwards. So now I was like, wait, take back game. But it did feel like that was kind of the separation. And then there was a stretch where you got 3 turnovers in a row, and it was Shea 3, Dub 3, Chet 3 in some order. And that was really like the final bit of separation that the Pacers were just never able to overcome. But yeah, even deep into that third quarter, TJ McConnell was eating Cason Wallace alive. Like Cason couldn't do anything with him. He was getting to his spot. He was just shooting his little 8-foot jumper. He was stretching it out to 12 feet, which I know is like when he's really feeling it. And yeah, it wasn't until that Lou Dort 3 and then the subsequent like triple threes from each of the big 3 that really felt like that game got put away.
Yeah, I did some research because I thought for a second, like, is there an interesting TJ McConnell wingspan number that I didn't remember from his draft combine? No. TJ McConnell is small for a small guard in NBA terms. There is a Space Jam, like, reach for the rim, lefty layup attempt that McConnell missed that also felt like a classic moment where I text you and Andy game. I don't know how he made it look so easy, but yeah, he beat maybe case in baseline, and it just rimmed out slightly, but it was after like a few absolutely ridiculous touch finishes from McConnell, where like in playoff LeBron fashion, he's taking the ball up the court, putting his back on dudes, and just like finding a way to the rim. And it's still like the physics make no sense to me. He just has a unique gift for stopping on a dime. He's another guy that like the NBA Combine doesn't totally know how to value athletically, because clearly, the much more ostensibly explosive athletes struggle to stay in front, and they struggle to contest his short range jumper, which he gets so much hang time on. But yeah, he had his 14, was it? I mean, it was something like that. But it was 8 straight at one point in early midway through the third, before they kind of quieted him down and he started turning over the ball a bit. But I gotta say, like, when I checked the box score and saw that TJ McConnell had 7 turnovers after the game, I was shocked. And Mike and I were both shocked at the time that Carlisle pulled him. He was a -11 in the game, I believe. And it does feel like that turnover number is a bit of a microcosm for like why you can fall in love with McConnell. But at the end of the day, you don't want him, being your primary in a key playoff game. I remembered like one pick six he threw that was just an ill-advised, like, cross court skip pass with no momentum. He decided to like hit a shooter. I think it was Ben Shepherd in the corner. And I think it was Caruso who just said, okay, thanks. Yeah, I'll take that. There were a couple poor McConnell decisions, but clearly Carlisle just didn't want him on the defensive end because the offense was a huge boost for them. And that also surprised me because it didn't seem like the Thunder were hunting and or toasting TJ McConnell on the other end. I never got that feeling.
Yeah.
Can I go big picture for a second?
Go.
Or if you have something, Max, go ahead.
I was gonna say Shea was kind of comfortable just like backing him down to that elbow area and shooting over the top of him. But yeah, McConnell, he's like that elite middle innings reliever who, if you ask him to be your ace, it's just not going to go well. But if you need 6 outs in the 6th and 7th, he can do it. That's baseball corner. Go ahead, Micah.
Yeah. I feel like what happened, especially with the Halliburton injury in Game 7, was like a little microcosm of the fan experience for the whole playoffs. And I mean, Nathan can speak to this too. Like, the Thunder were not supposed to be, some like overwhelming favorite. Like, this, yes, everyone said, like, quickest rebuild ever. 4 years ago, we lost that game by like 76 points when we're starting these just unspeakable lineups, running offense through Poku, whatever. It's small market, lost all our guys, all this different stuff. And then suddenly you just get in this position as a fan where, like, because we were so good in the regular season, and during the regular season, it was just pure fun. It was just pure joy, every night to watch this team. And then you get into the playoffs and it's like, wow, if we lose, it's going to be a major, major disappointment. It felt that way in the Denver series. It's like, really? I thought we did this last year. Are we going to be too young again? And of course it felt that way in the finals too. Like, no matter how good the Pacers were and how much respect we had for them, it would have been a massive disappointment if we lost. That's part of why the whole country was probably started rooting against us, even though they're not a very hateable team. But like, look, I was euphoric when they won. I mean, I was, there was afterglow for the whole next day. I'm still feeling it. That's why I'm wearing the sunglasses and having a drink. Zach Lowe said he would have a drink live on the pod if the Pacers won Game 7, so I had to have one since we won. But like, for a team to be this young and have not won it before, and still have that sort of expectations on it is, I think, like, nearly unprecedented. And it made for a really weird fan experience where, like, sometimes when they won, I did feel more relief than excitement. And yeah, I can't, I have no regrets about the season. But it was kind of a weird space to navigate as a fan.
Yeah. And real quick, and then Nate, I'll let you go, but I feel like that also mounted with like every potential opponent that was knocked out, because like if it was Thunder versus the fully healthy Celtics, there probably wouldn't have been that feeling of like overwhelming favorites. Like, I think the Thunder probably would have been like mild favorites in that series, but there would have been a lot of people picking Boston, and like it would have been really tight. And then, there was a lot of Lakers buzz pre-playoffs, and like if that had somehow been the Western Conference playoffs, even though I think the Thunder would have beaten them pretty handily, like there would have been more buzz there. I think just like as a fan, every time you see the path of like potential obstacles getting clearer and clearer, then that like sense of internal and external pressure just kind of like builds and builds. But Nick, go ahead.
Yeah, no, Max, I was going to make the same point. I think it in some ways built throughout the season, but In other ways, there was a point midway through the second round of the playoffs where I was texting back and forth with Mike. The Cavs looked like they were about to be dispatched by the Pacers. The Celtics were going down to the Knicks. And as a Thunder fan, you just kind of looked around and you thought, oh my gosh, we're gonna be the last person standing, or we really can be the last person standing. And that's the moment where I think the expectations flipped on its head. Because if you said we're gonna lose to team X in game 7 of the Western Conference Finals, or we're gonna lose to team Y in 5 games in the NBA Finals, I think even 70 games into the season, most Thunder fans would have felt like that was a success and that was progress and that was what we were supposed to do. But sometimes the circumstances just align like this. And, in many ways that happened this for, the Celtics last time around and who they gotta play. And we got it this time.
Yeah, it just feels like the league is at a point in terms of depth of talent and 3-point variance, because every team now knows you got to shoot a lot of threes to win a title, that it's incredibly special to be the title favorite and win. Like it's extremely hard to do that now because of the wear and tear on guys' bodies. Micah mentioned the depth piece for OKC earlier. I think that's also been a bit of a revelation for me in this playoffs, that like it's better to have like 2 solid rotation guys than one really good player who's maybe a little bit better than both of them. And why maybe I was a little bit wrong when I said the Knicks were right to make that DiVincenzo and Randall for Cat trade. And I'm sorry to do this to you, Max, but like, yeah, two reliable playoff guys is better than one. And I'm not calling Randall or Cat reliable playoff guys. Yes, I am. But and so like, yeah, the Thunder like were able to survive in large part because they had good injury luck. But even if one of their key guys had gotten hurt, they just had awesome reinforcements. And like Aaron Wiggins is playing 25 plus minutes for the vast majority of teams, even that made the playoffs. And so like I think the Thunder are like this new age model. And, there's so much talk now about what the next few years are going to look like for them. How long will they be able to keep their big 3 before they simply can't afford them? And I'm sorry to begin that discussion, but we should start with the beautiful thing, which is this entire team is coming back next year. And repeating is almost impossible. This team is better set up to try to do it than anyone in a long time. And with all that said, I think the over-under for Thunder titles from here on out with this core, like let's say with SGA as their best player, is 0.5. And I think the over is a significant minus odds number, but it's still 0.5 and not 1.5. And I said this when the Bucks won in 2021, when the Nuggets won in 23, and when the Celtics won it in 24. And I'm skipping the Dubs because it was pretty clear the Warriors were aging and like they weren't going to be a finals mainstay. Like these windows close absurdly quickly. And even if the window isn't closing, like guys get hurt, you play a Nuggets team that plays out of their mind and pushes you way further than you expect them to. I know Zach Lowe has been on this, but like, yeah, it's just we're in an era now where like good luck stringing together a couple titles in a row or a couple titles in 3 years. It's so damn hard. There's just gonna be another team that has a comparable closing 5 that gets hot at the right time and has a great coach and like just has the right shooting momentum when it matters most. And so yeah, to get one ahead of schedule, even though it felt like you needed it, is still, goes without saying, incredibly special. In terms of like the relief piece, like I was bummed when the Thunder lost last year. Like I picked the Thunder to make the conference finals last year. They didn't quite get there. They were the 1 seed. They lost to Luka. I'm the first to admit, like it was absurd for me to have such high expectations for them. They were so young. It was their first playoff run with this core. They had won like 40 games the year before. But that's how much I believe in the DNA of these dudes. And I keep saying this. Micah's heard me say it now like 4 times, but there is so much like faux maturity with modern young athletes who are media trained from, 14 on the AAU circuit. Like guys know how to say the right things, and it's pretty hard to get like a real soundbite. And it's hard to discern like who are the real old souls, who are the real mature young guys versus like the Jason Tatums of the world. I just really, really buy into Shea and J Dub as like super special young men. And that's, it's what Presti said. And I told you, Sam Presti, if they won, was going to have a moment where he spits an absolute bar. And it was what? Maturity, age is just a number. Maturity and sacrifice are characteristics. And it's true. Like J Dub, when asked by SVP, what he'll take from this season, first and foremost, he said, without without any of my dumbass filler words, just says, time is a precious thing. And he said, like, he'll think about all those like liminal spaces he shared with this team, when the flights are delayed, the long bus rides, the moments where you don't have anything to do but hang with each other. And it just seems like for a really young team, these guys did a little bit less looking at their phone screens and a little bit more embrace of the moment with each other. And I think that has a lot to do with what got them over the hump.
Have you seen those videos of Tatum like plagiarizing all the famous lines of other guys like at the end of their run? Yeah, if the Celtics win next year, he's gonna say time is a precious thing. Just wait for it.
Just go ahead.
Well, there's no one thing that's great about the Thunder celebration, I think speaks to that real maturity is like there hasn't been a real moment. I mean, the closest thing is J-Dub going on SVP and saying that, but like there's not this yelling into the microphone. Maybe it's, and if it's anyone, it's Wiggins giving a speech at the Thunder parade 2 days later. I think it's real and it's really unique. But also to your point earlier, Drew, they can be as special as you come, but you got to get lucky with the injuries and what happens to other people. And I think people will define this playoffs by the injuries that happened throughout. And there was not a single person that wasn't Topic that showed up on the injury report for the entire time that the Thunder were in the playoffs. And this is a team that dealt with injury problems the whole season. And that's just lucky. Like there's some playing to it, but that's just lucky.
I will say on the injuries, while there were a ton in these playoffs, I don't know if there were any that I felt like really swung the outcome of a series, except maybe the Garland one, where like maybe Cleveland would have beaten Indy if they had a healthy Darius Garland. But like, yeah, Tatum tore his Achilles, but the Knicks were already going to go up 3-1 when that happened. I never want that to be lost to history.
I'll be honest, I've been lying. I had the Celtics coming back, but yeah, go ahead.
Possible. Dame, the Bucks probably weren't going to beat the Pacers anyways, and like, yeah. And then Halliburton, it happened in Game 7. The Pacers were, scratched and clawed their way to get to that Game 7, but the Thunder were favorites to win that game anyways. So yes, injuries happen every year, but I wouldn't put this in the same class as like the Celtics last year, who I do think were like the best team all year, but having the best player in every series that they played get hurt up until the finals was like a rare stretch of injury, like reverse luck. But I definitely agree with Drew that this is the team best set up to repeat since the KD Warriors. And I'm honestly surprised. Mike is going to fucking hate me for saying this. I'm honestly surprised that there has been no 73 win talk for the Thunder next year. Because, yeah, Mike is already shaking his head.
They're not in the East, Max.
They're not in the East, but they won 68 games this year with Chet missing 50 and Hartenstein missing 25. And like they can load manage their guys next year and still have them more than they did this year. Like Caruso missed a bunch of games just in planned maintenance. And then like every player on this team except for Hartenstein and Caruso, I should be better next year. Like J-Dub should be better. Shea will probably still just be Shea, but he might add some things to his game. Chet, I think, is going to be a lot better than the guy we saw the second half of the season in the playoffs. Like, we do need to remind everyone that he had a hip fracture in the middle of the year and came back and was still really good defensively, but I think it sapped a lot of his sort of fluidity offensively. Side note, if there's one thing he needs to work on this year, it's speeding up his goddamn release on his jumper because there's so many times where he looks open and then by the time he actually gets it off, he's not. But Casey Wallace should get better going into his third year. Aaron Wiggins should be better. Yeah, and then you go even further down the line. Like, I thought AJ Mitchell as a rookie showed some real things as like a backup point guard creator, and like one of the weaknesses for this Thunder team was outside of Shea and J Dub at times, they just didn't have enough like primary offense creation. Maybe they draft that this year. Maybe it's year two AJ Mitchell, who's a little bit more of like a competent backup point guard. You have Topic coming, who's like a lottery pick from last year, who can also provide some initiation. And then just, yeah, with all the internal improvement, which is set to happen, the East is going to be even worse next year. Like the Thunder only lost one game to the Eastern Conference this year. I can see that repeating again. And yeah, the West is the West, but they handled it this year. And like, they were blowing teams out. Like it's not like they were scratching and clawing to get to 68 wins. So I know Micah doesn't want to hear it, but I think it should be thrown out there.
Well, I'm glad you went there. I was going to do a transition before you just went full Jalen Green of this podcast, taking my usual role. But yeah, we have about 10 minutes here before Nate needs to leave for corporate hell. I'm assuming if his bosses are listening, that those are my words. He's happy to be working with you. And Micah has a remote date with his wonderful girlfriend Emma. If you're listening to this, Emma, it's all my fault. I'll take this one. Let's look at next year a little bit. I agree, Max. As Mike and I were descending on the escalator post game, my mind immediately went to Chet's offense. Chet as a scorer is like the first potential area of growth that just is so obvious to me for the Thunder. I think he needs to simplify a lot on offense. It's great that you're 7'1" and you can dribble like that, but like your center of gravity is just too high. You're too damn tall. Like you can only dribble so much at that height in the NBA. And I think he gets himself into trouble, makes his drives a little more complicated than they need to be. When he simplifies things and is just kind of working with his pivot foot and creating separation with his length, like suddenly you see the clear path to Chet being a consistent, efficient 20-point per game scorer. But I think it was the lonesome oligarch Elon Musk who said, if a nation isn't growing, it's dying. And the Thunder are going to need to get better to defend this title. Like, there are a lot of dogs in this league coming for you now. The target was on your back when you won 68. It's a bigger target now. So Micah and Nate, like, what are you looking for next year to try to take this from one title to a historic run?
Well, I'll start by saying that I think the next challenge for the Thunder team is the next mental challenge is what's going to happen with the championship hangover, because that happens with every single team. They let it loose a little bit in the regular season. And this team strikes me as different, that they're not going to want to do that because they're a little too young. They're still coming into being, but there's a real chance that they go through a bit of a midseason slump. I think if they would have lost game 7, and I texted Mike and Drew this, I thought we were going to go 76-6 the next year because it just would have carried in all the way forward. But next year is just about small improvements. I'm more worried, not to push it even further out, about what it looks like year after that. I think next year we're basically running back the exact same with small improvements at the margins. We'll see what happens in the draft. But the thing that's hanging over this team is the iHeart team option that's going to happen at the end of next year. And I think that is a much more important decision than people are realizing, because it allows us to play in multiple different ways. And I don't think that we've seen Chet come to be as a way that can be a starting center for 82 games that allows them to play the way they want. And so my theory is that I'm as high as anyone else on the Thunder for next year, but I think this window is actually a lot smaller than what people are saying. This is not a Golden State Warriors 5-year situation.
Disgusting happiness hedge, but we'll take it. Micah.
I mean, yes, it's a, you don't want to be the guy saying, oh, we're about to enter a, 8-year dynasty, but it's objectively true that the new like rules of the NBA mean that the windows are smaller, even if you set yourself up like Presti did. I I think that undoubtedly the West is going to be better next year than it was this year, and it was really, really good this year. But weirdly, right by the end, kind of a lot of the contenders just didn't quite get there. You know, Denver maybe was even better than people realized, but other ones kind of fell off. I mean, I think that the Rockets now will be a real contender. I think the Warriors, part of it is just my trauma, but the Warriors are going to be very legit next year.
The Jazz.
Maybe not in the regular season, but definitely in the playoffs. I think the Spurs, we'll see who they draft today, but like the Spurs, if Wemby is healthy, are going to be a real force next year. I was just looking at the pictures of shaved head Wemby, taking selfies with a picture of Mao. I mean, he's not going to Cabo this summer. He's locking in. So I don't know. I think we need to pump the brakes on the 73 win stuff. But yeah, I think there's no doubt we're going to be the favorite. We have the same team. The defense is not going anywhere, and the offense can only improve. I mean, we can say it now, like the offense was not very good in the playoffs. Like it
Not at all.
certainly wasn't good in the finals. And it's that's not to say like, oh, we were so good and then we just didn't play well. I think it's just like the offense didn't develop that much throughout the year because it didn't need to. I think, probably Coach Dag was just much more focused on the defense this year. And I'd like to see what we can do with, a little more sharpness and organization on that end and a little less of just like rely on the defense and, everybody give it to Shea when things get close and he's going to make it happen. That it worked. Shea was that good and the defense was that good, but this is a long way from like the offense of other teams that were dynasties where they have this locked in system, and the ball movement, all sorts of stuff. We were not hitting that level. So that's what I have to look forward to. But I expect with a target on our back in a really good West, if anything, I expect our win total to decrease. I mean, we could win 62 games and you'll probably still win the West. Like, it's not like I think we're gonna, go down by 20 wins, but I don't know. I think that the playoffs are what matter next year, and the regular season will be more like what can we figure out on offense to kind of unlock a new level.
Yeah, outside of the individual growth of guys across your roster who are young, who have shown potential to expand certain corners of their games, the offensive cohesion is definitely a potential upgrade for next year in itself, like more Shea and J-Dub pick and rolls where they're both involved in the action and you're bringing in the other two, the other team's two best defenders, and kind of absorbing all the defensive talent on a roster so that you can then get it to your role players who will be, have like more room to operate. It definitely felt like there was a lot of your turn, my turn with Shea and J-Dub in the playoffs. And I want this offense next year to look more like signature Micah Cash old fashioned and not an old fashioned that Micah leaves on the windowsill and coagulates in the Tulsa heat. So we're going to need a straw to stir the drink, and it might be AJ. I'm a huge AJ Mitchell guy. I think I had him at 20 on my board last year. They got him somewhere in the 30s. It might be Nikola Topic, who I had at 5 last year and would have been higher if he hadn't just torn his ACL. It might be a guy who's not on the roster right now.
I mean, first of all, what I would want to see is the 3-point shooting numbers go up. Like it's pretty insane and speaks to how great the Thunder defense was this whole playoffs, that they won the title with the 13th best 3-point percentage of the 16 playoff teams. They shot 33.8% in the modern NBA, several games against Indy where they were in the single digits of 3-point makes. And it's a team that was top 6 in regular season 3-point percentage. So I don't know if that's just a young guy pressure thing, but figuring out how to get those guys into to bring their 3-point percentage from the regular season to the playoffs is going to be huge. And then, in the West, I think to beat this Thunder team, you need like either a number one offensive guy who can go toe to toe with Shea against tight defenses and still just like score enough that it doesn't matter, which like there's probably only three of those guys in the league. It's Jokic who can go toe to toe. It's peak Luka, as we saw in the Dallas series the year before. And then like, maybe Steph if he's really got it going on. And then I don't even know if there's anyone in the Eastern Conference who I really trust in like a tight half court setting to do that. So yeah, I think obviously they enter as big favorites. I think Houston is really interesting with KD, and we probably don't have time to talk about them, but being able to just like muck the game up and have the guy to hit those tough jumpers down the stretch could make them an interesting foe. But yeah, I'm just going to say this team reminds me a lot of the 15 Warriors in the sense of like winning a title kind of ahead of schedule and being honestly their playoff run mirrors the Warriors in a lot of ways with being down 2-1 in multiple series and pulling it out. And that was one of the few teams that after winning a title came out and said like, no, we're going to prove that we're like an all-time dominant team, and came up one game short. But that's why I threw the 73 game thing out there.
All right. To close things out, Micah, did you make it to the parade?
I'm muted because there's some lawnmower happening behind me. I didn't make it to the parade. I did unfortunately make it to Facebook because I'm moving and so selling stuff on Marketplace. And I had to see that there was so much discussion about the lack of crowd size at the parade that Oklahoma City's mayor, David Holt, actually had to make a post responding to it. Let me just say something. I wasn't at the parade. I don't know what the crowd size was. I can't believe, we're still talking about crowd size and Trump isn't even involved. But the picture that I saw, the post on Facebook, was comparing it to the Warriors championship parade and the Cavaliers championship parade, and apparently how they were much bigger. Well, the parade was at 10:30 a.m. on a Tuesday. Okay. So Max can attest to this, I think. In San Francisco, nobody has a real job. Like you all have, these remote jobs that you're getting paid way too much for. And then in Cleveland, like probably nobody has a job at all. So Oklahoma City is just like a normal city where people go to work on a Tuesday morning and they maybe can't all make it to the parade. So I had to get that in before we stopped. And while I'm just going rogue before we get off here, let me just say that last night, Zohran Mamdani won the New York City primary, despite, biggest victory of his career, despite some videos surfacing of past raps that he had done. And I just want to note the parallel between him and Sam Presti, who both within the span of a week won the biggest victories of their career, despite some videos being resurfaced of their previous, some would say embarrassing, some would say creative and inspiring young careers as a rapper.
Presti's is miles ahead of Zoran's, I must say.
For all of the healthily offline dads listening to the pod, yeah, Micah's referencing Sam Presti's old mixtape from a couple decades ago that Pablo Torre recently discovered and aired out on his show. And I don't think it was a bad look at all. I actually think he is clearly like, a huge fan of Tribe Called Quest and did a pretty good impression. And I'm just a massive Sam Presti fan. He couldn't really do wrong by me right now. But yeah. Nate, closing thoughts, 2025 Oklahoma City Thunder.
The parade would have been better attended if our governor, Kevin Stitt, would have given state employees the day off. It happens in almost every state when you win a parade. 25% of Oklahoma City is state employees. This is a political scandal that must be discussed more.
Nate is born to lead, and I hope this clip is discovered in 10 years. Okay, well, it is draft night. My favorite night of the year, since the Blazers will never contend again. We've seen a lot of rumors. There's always draft buzz. The Thunder have the assets to get anyone they want. I mean, they could get Cooper Flagg, but they're not going to break up this magic they have now and go get him. But, they might move up and try to get a big, someone who fits well with Chet. Colin Murray-Boyles of South Carolina comes to mind. Danny Wolf of Michigan comes to mind. Thomas Sorber of Georgetown comes to mind. A lot of buzz around Sorber specifically. I have some ins at Georgetown who claim Presti was at a lot of Georgetown practices this year. So there's a good chance there's a significant new piece on the Oklahoma City Thunder at the end of June 25th, 2025. Sam Presti's not done building. He's known this was a marathon and not a sprint from day one. It started with the SGA trade, and just his draft track record at this point is stuff of legend, going from KD in 2007 to Westbrook in 2008 to Harden in 2009.
Ibaka.
And I'm forgetting which year he got Ibaka, but it was obviously soon after. What can you say? I'm glad one of the best GMs in NBA history now has a ring to show for his incredible work. And I'm really grateful for this NBA playoffs, man. It was an awesome ride. The ups, the downs. I think we need to stop having such sort of like cold and hard expectations for teams just because there's so much variance and the physicality has reached a level where like star players go down here and there. And it's just baked into the formula now. Like it's part of the playoffs. You better be 8 or 9 deep because you are going to lose 1 or 2 guys that really matter. And one of the special things about this Thunder team is that they were built to sustain an injury or two and still be right there in the mix. So that's all I've got. But if anyone wants to close it out, do your thing.
No, I think that's it. You covered it well, Drew. But thanks everyone for listening. Thank you, Micah and Nate, for coming on. And going to take a 20-minute break before our draft live. So thanks everyone. We'll be back soon. Peace.
Boris Dirk.